In this video I want to show two methods of skin retouching where we retain some of the skin texture but also smooth out the blotchiness. And that is a problem with some of the methods that are used in skin retouching. Skin gets smoothed and the blotchiness is removed, but also the skin texture is removed. And this really doesn't look too realistic. So this method and the other one I'm going to show, we get away from this problem. So first thing I need to do is my top layer. I'm going to go Command I to invert the layer. I'm going to right click on it and convert to Smart Object. I'm going to my blend modes and turn the blend mode into Vivid Light. I'm going up to my filter, down to Other, and use High Pass. I'm going to use reasonably high radius so that it shows up in the video, but of course because we're using Smart Object we can come back and change these values. Now I'm going back to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur, and this value is not too far out, probably maybe up it a little bit, and we'll click OK and we'll have a look at the before and the after. Hold down my Option key, click on the background layer I. There's the before, there's the after, the before and the after. Now we can up these values so that we can blur the blotches out even more, but I think what I would do in this case, I would probably just take out some of these little spots individually with the clone tool or the spot healing. Any of those tools we could use to get rid of some of these little spots. So we, like I said, we can go back because it's a smart object and go back to High Pass, and we can take that up a little more. But and as far as the Gaussian blur is concerned, we can make that more or less. Let's take it down less. So, and this works in reverse because we already inverted the first layer there. Let's take it down this far, and this is over the top. Now we could put a mask on there. So I'll put a layer mask on there. Command I to invert that. Then I could get a brush, right bracket key to make it way bigger, and make my flow 100%, and then we can start brushing this in where we feel it's needed. Lots of options with this method. And that's the wonderful thing about Photoshop. So many options. So once again we'll have a look at the before and the after. And it is over the top, there's no doubt about it. But of course we could always back off on the opacity to somewhere we were comfortable with. This second technique is called frequency separation. And really all it means is that we're going to put the texture on one layer and the color on another layer, so that when we adjust the color and try and smooth out the blotchiness, that doesn't affect the texture. And we can work on the texture separately on that layer. So first off, I want to close this layer, go on to the layer below, and I'll use my panel here, go to Gaussian blur and put some blur on the image. Now with this method, unfortunately we have to try and get the amount of blur right the first time, because we can't use smart objects with apply image. So we need to, it doesn't need to be too blurry, but on the other hand it needs to be blurred enough. So I think I'll go with something like that and click OK. Now I'll go back to my top layer, turn that on, go over to image and down to apply image, and I've changed the layer order, which would normally be there from layer copy 1 to layer 1, and I'm using the subtract blend mode with a scale of 2 and an offset of 128. Now those numbers are the numbers that the person who ever come up with this practice or technique, they're the numbers that he come up with, and I see no reason to change them. They seem to work well. Then we click OK. Now so we can see what we're doing, we're going to change the blend mode from normal to linear light. Now we can see what we're doing here. Okay, so we're kind of basically back where we started. There really is no change, because if we go to a history palette and check our history, we get no change. Okay, now I need to work on the second layer and to smooth out the color or the color blotching. I'm going to use L on the keyboard to get my lasso, and we'll just check that out and we'll see what kind of blur I've got on there by hitting the Q key, and it's got some feathering on the edges, and it's probably enough. So hit the key Q again to get out of there, Command D to deselect. Okay, now I'll take in a larger area here, and go over to Gaussian blur and have a look at the before and the afters. Not too much difference, but there is some. Anyway, we'll take that up. That's kind of going too far, but anyway, we'll leave it somewhere around there so it shows up in the video. There's the before, there's the after. Click OK. We'll take another chunk here, and Gaussian blur, and we'll have a look at that. Probably okay, and we can carry on. Maybe we'll do some more here. And obviously, if I was doing this for real, I'd be taking a little more care, but this will demonstrate the process. And of course we can change the amount of blur we're using if it's too strong. We'll probably should do the nose a little bit, but there is one problem with this, is that when we do this we tend to lose some of the shadow detail, and so we lose definition, but we can bring that back. Anyway, we'll take that up just a little bit maybe, but not too much so we lose too much. And we could probably go a little better than that. Okay. We've got a few marks that we could go around and take out later. So what I would probably, of course we haven't done the forehead, but you get the idea. Anyway, what I would probably do now is either think that that's okay, and it's probably a bit over the top, so what we do is go back onto the second layer, and we could lower the opacity if we thought that was too much. So you got the choice of deciding how much of this you want to apply. Anyway, we'll make a stamp visible layer, and because we're using a blend mode, I'm going to go Command Option Shift N to make a new layer, so we make sure we get back to a normal mode, and then E. Okay, so now we've got a copy of that. I would go over to my spot healing tool, clone tool, and take out some of these little marks, so on. Maybe we'll get rid of that, and just basic clean up. Now I said we could bring some of this definition back, and probably the way I would do that is by using a soft light blend mode, and I would get my brush, soft edge brush, and using black. So basically what I'm doing is burning this in, and hit 1 on the keyboard for 10%, and just gonna bring a little bit more definition in there, and maybe we'll even a little bit down there, and we could fix up all these other little bumps and the little blown out area on the nose and so on and so on. But anyway, that's the basic technique.